Sister divorced while pregnant with her fourth child. While I was on an overseas assignment, she remodeled my new house's bedrooms into kids' rooms without permission. Parents laughed. Stop being so selfish. Family comes first, I said nothing, but I did something. The next day she panicked. No way, tell me it's not true. Well, let's go. I threw out all your stuff. You don't need that tacky furniture anyway, right? That was the first thing my sister said to me when I came back home after setting foot in my hometown for the first time in 6 months. My name is Maris Hale and I'm 35 years old. I work as a marketing manager at a major American tech company. 6 months ago, I finally achieved one of my lifelong dreams. I bought my very own brand new house. But before I even had time to fully enjoy that happiness, my company assigned me to a 6-month post in Seoul. It was an incredible career opportunity. There was no reason to refuse. The only thing that worried me was leaving my brand new home completely empty. After some thought, I decided to talk to my mother about it and eventually gave her a spare key. You're always so responsible, Maris. Don't worry about the house. Just focus on your work. I thanked her sincerely for her kindness, filled with hope as I left the States for Seoul. Life overseas was fast-paced and exciting. Time flew by quickly. Work went smoothly, and as my return date approached, I received a short message from my mother that made my stomach twist. Your sister got divorced. She's having a hard time. To be honest, my sister and I have never really gotten along. She's always been emotional, impulsive, and quick to blame others for the consequences of her own decisions. So, when I heard that she was getting divorced again while pregnant with her fourth child, my first reaction was closer to resignation than surprise. Of course, her children, my nieces and nephews, are innocent. Thinking about them made my heart ache, but it was still my sister's problem. I had neither the need nor the obligation to get involved. But that boundary would be trampled with shocking ease while I was on the other side of the world. The second call from my mother wasn't to ask. It was to inform me. Your sister had nowhere to go. So I decided to let her stay in your house for a while. Her voice was cheerful, almost proud, as if she had made some brilliant discovery. Wait, what? In my house? You can't just decide that on your own. My protest didn't move her at all. What are you talking about? I have the spare key and you're not even there. You're sisters. It's only natural to help each other in times of need. It might sound reasonable on the surface, but in reality it was moral blackmail, a demand that I sacrifice my property and privacy for the sake of family. Still, I didn't yet grasp how serious things really were. At worst, I imagined my sister crashing on the living room couch for a while. Knowing my sister's personality, that alone was unbearable. But for now, I had no choice but to endure it. Reality, however, turned out to be far worse than anything I could have imagined. A few days later, a friend from the neighborhood called me on video chat and gave me the first glimpse of the disaster unfolding at my house. Maris, there's a construction truck parked in front of your place and they're unloading baby furniture. Are you doing some kind of renovation? I felt the blood drain from my face and immediately called my mother. What's going on at my house? What do you mean renovation? Even then she sounded calm. Oh, your sister's having a baby soon, right? So, we decided to turn your bedroom into a nursery. Felt dizzy with rage. My bedroom. That's my house. But my mother said, don't get so worked up over details. And hung up. Came home as fast as I could. The house that was supposed to be the symbol of my success, my personal sanctuary, stood before me. But the moment I opened the front door, the sight that greeted me made me wonder if I had walked into the wrong place. A stroller sat abandoned in the hallway. A diaper bag spilled across the floor, and the air reeked of formula and baby powder. When I opened the living room door, the shock only deepened. The Italian sofa I'd carefully chosen was gone, replaced by scattered toys and crayon drawings smeared across the walls. Panicking, I rushed to the bedroom and froze. What I saw was a nightmare. The walls were painted in blinding hot pink. A cheap star-shaped mobile dangled from the ceiling. And the floor was covered in animal-patterned playmats. And in the middle of that horror, rocking a baby I didn't even recognize was none other than my sister. "Oh, you're back." That was her first line to me after 6 months. No surprise, no joy. "What is this? Why are you here? Where's my furniture?" She sighed dramatically as if I were the one being unreasonable and repeated the same words she'd greeted me with. I had nowhere to go after the divorce. Mom gave me the key. Or family. It's only natural to help each other, right? Her shamelessness sent my anger skyrocketing. Without another word, I turned around and drove straight to my parents' house to confront them. My father only furrowed his brows in troubled silence while my mother actually laughed and said, "Oh, Maris, really family helps each other. Your sister's been through so much." They were out of their minds. I turned on my heel and walked straight out, checking myself into a nearby Bluebird Inn. Lying on the cold sheets, I made up my mind in absolute silence. This was no longer something that could be solved by talking. This was a war for everything I had. I barely slept that night. The next morning I went straight to the local police station. If I explained everything, maybe they could remove my sister for trespassing. A faint hope, but the only one I had left. But the reaction of the middle-aged officer at the reception desk shattered my expectations completely. At first, he at the front desk listened sympathetically. But when he heard that the intruder was my sister and that she'd gotten the key from our mother, his expression shifted to weary indifference. "So, it's a family matter. I'm sure your sister has her reasons. Rather than escalating this, perhaps it would be best for your family to sit down and talk things through." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Talk things through. With that absurd family, what is there left to discuss? They are not people who can be reasoned with. My property has been trespassed. I raised my voice and he repeated his usual line. "I'm afraid there's little we can do. Since your mother gave her the key, it would be difficult to prove intent of unlawful entry. This falls under what we call a domestic civil dispute, and police are not authorized to intervene. I'm sorry." His words hit like a verdict, a cold rejection from what I had thought was the last line of defense. As I stepped out of the police station, numb and furious, I felt despair. And beneath it, something stronger, a quiet, burning anger. Society, the law, justice. None of them were on my side. Fine. If the system wouldn't help me, I would fight on my own terms within the rules, but with my own justice. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my company's list of legal advisors until I found the name I needed, Harlan Price, a lawyer known for his expertise in real estate disputes. Fortunately, he was able to meet that very afternoon. I organized the timeline of events and went straight to his office. Seeing him in person, not just through a screen, his sharp, steady gaze immediately reassured me. He listened to everything without interrupting. Then in a calm but firm voice he said, "The police were right about one thing. This is a civil matter, and in civil law, evidence is everything. Emotions and sympathy hold no weight in court. Maris, your fight to reclaim your home starts here." His words lit a fire in me. There was no room left for self-pity. I would gather the weapons I needed to win on the battlefield of the courtroom. "Evidence, huh?" I repeated thoughtfully. "But I can't even enter the house freely. How am I supposed to collect it?" Harlan smiled faintly, a strategist revealing his first move. "There's a way. You don't need to confront her directly. You just need to strike at the one point where she least expects it, legally." His plan was as follows. I would tell my sister that I was refinancing my mortgage and that the bank required an official appraisal of the property. It was an entirely plausible excuse, a normal procedure for any homeowner. Since my sister wasn't the owner, she had no legal authority to block the appraisal. And the appraiser, actually a trusted investigator Harlan had hired, Quinton Malloy, would conduct a thorough inspection while I accompanied him as the homeowner. The objective was to document every corner of the house in high-definition photos and video. The complete state of the damage. She'd probably resist at first, but if you tell her that obstructing an official bank appraisal could harm her legal standing, she'll have no choice but to agree. He was absolutely right. At first, my sister tried to stall, mumbling something about being busy. But when I told her my lawyer would notify the bank if she refused, she grudgingly consented. A few days later, I stood once again in front of my house, this time with the appraiser beside me. When my sister opened the door, she glanced at me briefly and turned away with a scowl. But I didn't care anymore. Keeping my composure, I followed the investigator inside. He moved methodically through the rooms, clipboard in hand, filming everything with a small but powerful camera. "We'll need to record the condition of each room for valuation purposes," he said in his professional tone. My sister didn't suspect a thing. Every stain on the floor, every crayon mark on the walls, every inch of the master bedroom now drowned in garish pink paint. It was all documented carefully and thoroughly under the guise of an official appraisal. As she stood there unaware, I looked at her back and thought quietly to myself, just a few more moves until checkmate. That same afternoon, I went straight to Harlan's office. I transferred the videos and photos onto his computer. He leaned forward, studying each image intently, especially the scribbled walls and the desecrated master bedroom. A deep crease formed between Harlan's brows, and I watched as it slowly shifted, not into surprise, but into a quiet, professional anger. Then he turned to me with a sharp question. "Excellent evidence. But tell me, Maris, do you have any proof of what the house looked like before the damage?" "I do," I answered immediately. I was so happy when I bought the place that I took photos of every corner like a magazine spread. I opened my laptop and shared a folder from my cloud drive titled Haven Photos. Inside were images of a flawless living room, elegant walnut floors, and a serene master bedroom with soft off-white walls. Harlan alternated between the photos and the video of the damage I had shown him, nodding deeply with satisfaction. "Perfect. With this, we can prove malicious intent beyond question. There's no room for debate. They'll never expect you to have such complete evidence. This will be our strongest weapon." Then he laid out the first step of our counterattack. "First, based on this evidence, let's immediately demand their departure. We will send a certified letter with delivery confirmation to your sister and parents. The notice will contain 2 points. First, an order to vacate immediately. Second, a warning that all property damage will be assessed after handover, and that full restoration costs will be claimed through legal channels. We won't specify any monetary amount yet. The uncertainty will make it more intimidating." I nodded firmly. Yes, ending the illegal occupation came first. I clenched my fist tightly, feeling that at last I could raise the banner of my counterattack. The day the notice must have arrived, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating in my Bluebird-in room. Calls and messages from my mother and sister flooded the screen like a storm. Just as Harlan had advised, I simply stared at their names coldly. No replies, no explanations. When I didn't answer, voicemail notifications began to pile up. Later, during a short break at work, I put in my earphones and pressed play. "Maris, what on earth is going on? I just got some sort of letter from a lawyer. You're evicting your sister and threatening to sue your own family. Are you insane, suing your own family?" My mother's voice was shrill, almost hysterical, filled not with concern for the harm I'd suffered, but with outrage that her little scheme had unraveled. Next came my sister's turn. Fake sobs laced through every word. "Maris, how could you do this to me? To us? I have nowhere to go with my children. You didn't need to make it this serious. Bringing in a lawyer. Please, let's just talk this out. Don't do this to me, okay?" But her words slid off me like rain on glass. It was the same old act she'd perfected over the years, playing the victim to guilt-trip others into submission. If she truly wanted to talk things out, she wouldn't have invaded my home and destroyed my belongings in the first place. Everything was unfolding exactly as Harlan had predicted. They'll try to shake you emotionally first. Don't give them an inch. His calm professionalism was my shield. I turned off my phone, took a deep breath, and exhaled slowly. No more starring in their family drama. Several days had passed since I had started completely ignoring their messages. Harlan's office informed me, as expected, that both my mother and sister had called repeatedly, demanding to speak with me. He summarized their messages in a concise email. Your mother insists you've lost your mind and that bringing a family dispute to court is insane. Your sister claims she's in financial distress and unable to move out immediately. Neither shows any intention of complying. I wasn't surprised. I hadn't expected them to surrender easily. It was clear that my sister would take full advantage of her position as the victim to try to get her way. But Harlan was already 2 steps ahead. In that case, he said, we'll file for a provisional injunction with the court requesting immediate eviction. Once granted, it becomes a court order, meaning enforcement officers can legally remove her from the premises. I agreed without hesitation. There was no reason for mercy. They had trampled my goodwill and violated my property. Now they would face the lawful consequences. The injunction process moved quickly. My evidence, the before and after images, proved decisive. One set of footage showed the devastation I'd recorded upon returning home. The other, the pristine photographs from my Haven Photos folder. Placed side by side, they made the truth undeniable. A beautiful home deliberately ruined out of spite. The court swiftly ruled in my favor and issued an eviction order against my sister. Later, I learned from a neighbor what happened when the enforcement officer arrived to post the notice on the door. It was something to see, Maris. Your sister ran outside, completely pale, staring at that paper like it was a death sentence. At last, confronted by the absolute power of the law, a realm where her emotional manipulation held no weight, she finally seemed to grasp the reality of her situation. That night my phone rang again. This time it was my father. My father had stayed silent through the whole mess. He neither stopped my mother and sister's rampage nor actively joined in. He simply chose to look the other way. Then came his first call in months. Maris. His voice over the phone was frail and exhausted. Please, can you stop this? I understand how you feel, but suing your sister, suing the family, we can't face the world like that. Your mother's already a wreck. Don't make this any bigger. It was a plea. But underneath those words was not sympathy for my pain. It was protectionism, a selfish attempt to preserve their peace and public image. Dad, are you saying that to me? To the woman whose bedroom was destroyed. Not to the sister who's illegally occupying my house, or to the mother who enabled it. At my quiet question, he stumbled for words. The call with my father ended without resolution. He kept repeating, "We are family. Don't make a scene," and never once addressed the damage done to me or the wound it left. When I hung up, I sighed, not with anger but with pity. His fear of rocking the boat had effectively enabled my mother and sister's behavior. I resolved then and there to stop expecting any sort of justice from him as a father. The provisional injunction carried a 2-week eviction grace period. Would my sister leave willingly or fight to the bitter end? I watched the situation from my Bluebird-in room, holding my breath. According to Harlan's updates, my sister scrambled to find a lawyer and tried to mount a defense. But with the evidence stacked so heavily in our favor, their chances were slim. The day before the eviction deadline, I received a message from my sister dripping with hatred. "You ruined my life. You're going to throw me and the baby I'm carrying and my 3 other kids out on the street, aren't you? You demon. People like you don't deserve a warm home. I hope you freeze and die alone in that huge empty house." Surprisingly, I felt no anger reading it, only a deep pity. Even then, she blamed all her misfortune on me. I forwarded the message straight to Harlan without replying, simply titling the email, "Message from my sister for your records." At noon the next day, the eviction deadline, Harlan emailed me a brief note. "Sometime after 11 a.m. today, we confirmed that your sister and her children vacated the premises. Congratulations, Maris. Your home has been returned to you." When I read that line, the taut nerve of stress inside me snapped. But there was no time for sentimentality. Getting the house back was only the start of the real fight. I checked out of the Bluebird-in immediately and went home. The interior was worse than I'd feared, and seeing it only hardened my resolve. I contacted Harlan at once, and under his direction began final preparations to claim damages. There were the contractor estimates for restoration, and then the inventory I painstakingly compiled, a record of every single item she had thrown away, cross-referenced with the Haven photos as I recalled each piece and its history. The total damages came to a sum large enough to buy a used house in a regional town, an amount my sister could never possibly pay. Harlan drafted the final demand letter documenting the mountain of evidence and the figure. We sent this to my sister again as a certified letter. Payment deadline, 30 days. If they didn't comply, we would file a civil suit immediately. There would be no escape. A few days later, my mother called in a thin, frightened voice. "Maris, please, I beg you, stop. She can't possibly pay that kind of money. If something gets seized, she won't survive. What about her children? Are you willing to make your nieces and nephews homeless? How can you be so heartless?" Here it was again. They used the children as a shield. My mother's standard tactic. "Mom, you should have said that before she wrecked my bedroom. You're worried about the wrong people. If you truly cared about those children's futures, you'd stop running from your mistakes and show them a mother who takes responsibility. How can you say such cold things? Is sorry. People who are truly sorry don't hire lawyers to fight to the end." I shot back. "I'm done talking to family outside of counsel. Goodbye." I cut her off and ended the call. It would likely be the last real conversation. I quietly and permanently deleted my mother's name from my phone. As the payment deadline approached, Harlan called. "Maris, we've heard from the other side." His voice was as composed as ever. "Their lawyer says they can't possibly pay the amount demanded. They are requesting a substantial reduction. If they can't pay, they say they will file for bankruptcy." Bankruptcy. It was the lowest, most effective threat she could use. And she was prepared to use it. If she declared bankruptcy, the compensation I might recover could shrink to a negligible amount or, worst case, vanish entirely. For a moment, blood rushed to my head, and I nearly lost all strength. After destroying my home and my life, she now intended to hide behind the law, to walk away without consequence. The sheer audacity of it left me speechless. For several seconds I sat in silence, emotions swirling violently inside me. Anger, disappointment, helplessness. And then from the chaos, a single unmistakable answer rose to the surface. "I see," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Then Harlan, please proceed with the lawsuit. I don't care if I never recover a single dollar. What I want is for her actions to be judged in a court of law, publicly, officially. I want the fact that she cannot escape responsibility to be carved into her life in the form of a judgment." After a brief pause, Harlan replied, his tone carrying a quiet note of respect. "That's an excellent decision, Maris. I was going to suggest the same." In truth, the opposing lawyer seemed hesitant. He knows they have no chance of winning. I believe the word bankruptcy was merely a bluff to shake your resolve. His words steadied me. This was no longer about money. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my life, my boundaries. I formally instructed Harlan to proceed with the lawsuit. Negotiation was over. Now it was up to the court to speak the truth. And I knew this decision would sever whatever fragile ties remained between me and my family. But I felt no regret. The notice that we were moving to litigation reached my sister's lawyer. And just as Harlan had predicted, the bankruptcy threat crumbled. A few days later, Harlan received a message from my sister's lawyer that could almost be called a complete surrender. They are willing to pay the full amount requested, but since a lump sum payment is difficult, they asked to pay in installments. "How would you like to proceed?" I paused for a moment to consider Harlan's report. I could take them to court, win decisively, and destroy what little reputation they had left. But my goal wasn't to ruin my sister socially. All I ever wanted was to restore my rights and to make her take responsibility for what she had done. "I'll accept installment payments," I responded, "but on two conditions. First, one of my parents must act as co-guarantor. Second, if she defaults even once, I retain the right to demand the full remaining balance immediately. And I want it all recorded as a notarized public document." It was the final nail, the one that ensured they could never run away again. They accepted the terms. A few weeks later, I sat in Harlan's office signing a mountain of papers. I never saw my sister again. Everything was handled quietly through our lawyers. And just like that, my long, grueling battle came to an end. I repaired the house without delay. The pink walls of the bedroom were repainted in calm off-white, and the scratches on the floor were restored. Piece by piece, I replaced the lost furniture. This time, choosing only what I truly loved. What brought me peace. The house was not only restored, but transformed, closer to the home I had always envisioned. But the family I had lost could never be restored. A year has passed. My sister has made every payment on time. Each transfer arriving silently into my account every month. That is now the only remaining thread that connects us. There has been no word from my parents. But recently, a friend from university, looking hesitant yet curious, told me what she had seen. "I ran into your sister and your mother at a discount store," she said. "Your sister looked exhausted. Her clothes were worn out. She was holding the baby and screaming at the other kids as they ran around, and she was yelling at your mom, 'Why don't we have any money? I can't even buy clothes for the children. Your mother just looks so old, so tired.' She kept muttering, 'We have no money left. None at all.' People were staring. It was hard to watch. I listened and felt nothing but stillness. No pity, no triumph. So that's how it is. I thought she would still turn a blind eye to the consequences of her own choices and take it out on our mother. My sister hasn't changed at all, and my parents who enabled her for so long are now paying the price. Literally. As her guarantors, sacrificing their own stability in the process. That is the path they chose. My home now stands quiet and peaceful, a fortress of my own. It is both my sanctuary and the proof of the fight I waged to protect my life. Perhaps I traded away the illusion of family to reclaim it. But I have no regrets. This calm, this silence, it is the peace I earned by defending my dignity and my home. Even blood ties have boundaries that must never be crossed. And sometimes to protect those boundaries you must choose to fight. In this quiet castle, I will go on living on my own terms.